Hey guys, Thrasher here. Today we're talking about team building. It's a really big topic, so let's get into it right now. Okay, so I do have an older team building guide, but it's really outdated and it was more about just showing you specific teams. Whereas in this video, I'm going to show you the theory behind building a team so that you can build a team no matter what new units come out. And I will show you some teams that I run right now, as well as some ideas for other teams that you could run if you had the units. Okay, let's talk about the different types of teams. Right now there are 4 types of teams in the game. There are aggressive teams who are meant to do a ton of damage and not take a lot of damage. Defensive teams who are meant to take a ton of damage and just outlast the other team. There are balanced who do a little bit of both. They can do fair damage and they can also take a decent amount of damage, but they're not amazing at either. And then there are gimmick teams. Gimmick teams are teams like a self-destruct team where specific units on the team are meant to go to the opponent, blow up on them, kill themselves, and do a ton of damage. We won't be talking really about gimmick teams. We'll be talking about the other 3, as gimmick teams are sort of one-off builds where the other 3 have things that you're looking to do in many different situations. Okay, now that you understand the different types of teams, you're going to want to select a team that works with your specific playstyle. So if you're an aggressive player, build out an aggressive team. If you're a defensive counter player, build out a defensive team. So the next thing you want to do is build out your core. There are 2 parts to a team. There are the 3 units that go into battle, which would be your core, and then there's your bench, which are the 3 units that hopefully are there to buff up your core. The one exception is if rather than building a core team with a bench team, you're building a team that has multiple counter options. So this team that you're looking at right here is a core team of the 3 units on the top, Spirit Bomb Goku, Sparking Purple Vegeta, and Super Saiyan Goku, and then you have 3 bench units on the bottom. Those 3 bench units are buffing up the 3 core units. The other option is rather than having just 3 core and 3 bench units, you can actually have multiple units who are in your core, and then you select the 3 units that you want to bring to battle based on your opponent. I would only set up a team like that for PvP where you don't know who your opponent's going to be. If you're doing general storyline stuff or event stuff, you know what the opponent's going to be, so you can set up a team of 3 core fighters and then 3 bench units. Quick note, when I'm talking about bench units buffing your core units, your bench units buff your core units through their Z ability. So whether a unit is in combat or sitting on your bench, their Z ability is always active, so keep that in mind. And if we go over to my PvP squad over here, we see sort of a mixture here. We have our core team, which is Vegeta, Goku, Vegeta, Spirit Bomb Goku, and Super Saiyan Goku, and then I've got Piccolo there depending on who I'm going up against. If it's an opponent who doesn't have a Broly, I will probably not even bring the Piccolo. I'll bring the 3 units up top because they're very aggressive, they can do a lot of damage really fast, and I'll just blow through the opponent, whoever they are. If they do bring a Broly, I'll bring the Piccolo so that he can eat a lot of Broly's damage. Okay, so now we've got the concept of a core team and the concept of bench units who are there to buff up the core team through their Z abilities. So let's go look at some Z abilities real fast and kind of give you an idea of what you should be looking for in your core units as well as your bench units. So I'm a fairly aggressive player. I'm looking for a unit that can do a lot of damage. So I have built this All Saiyans team around my Sparking Purple Vegeta. He does a lot of damage, and every unit in here is going to have a Z ability that buffs up Saiyans, because all of these guys have Saiyan tags. So as you're picking your core units, you need to be thinking about 3 major things. You need to be thinking about color synergy. So there's 2 types of color synergy. There's the ability to counter your opponent. So for example, Vegeta is a purple. He is countered by yellow units. Yellow are going to do a ton of damage to Vegeta. So one of my cores, hopefully, will be a red that can counter that yellow when they show up to hurt Vegeta, and I can get rid of that unit. On this team, if we go back real quick, Super Saiyan Goku is the red that I'm looking for to counter that yellow. And then a blue may show up to counter that Goku, but because he's not my absolute primary, I don't need someone to hard counter the blue. I just need someone that can jump in and do damage. So Vegeta could go back and do damage against the blue. I also have brought this Spirit Bomb Goku right here because he can also fight a blue unit and he's not at type disadvantage. So that's one huge thing to keep in mind, are the different types in the game, and make sure that you are not putting yourself at a massive disadvantage unless you're running a mono team. I don't think mono teams are strong enough yet to overcome the type disadvantages in this game, but they are getting there. Okay, so what are all of the synergy types in the game? I'm not going to cover absolutely every synergy, but the major ones are tags. So if we go to show details and we go all the way down to the bottom of the status tag, we'll see 2 character tags on this guy, Saiyan and Sun Family. So you want to look for abilities, if you were trying to buff this guy, that buff anyone with a Saiyan tag or a Sun family tag, which he happens to have that. So you want other units that have that. What else is there outside of tags? There's colors, so there's Z abilities that increase damage, defense, critical, key restore, other random things for specific color types. There's also episodes, so if we go back to status and we look at episode, he's episode Frieza Saga Z. So there are units that buff based on episode. And then the last major category type for buffing is character name. So this Goku doesn't have one exactly, but if we go back and look at Super Saiyan Goku, he actually has a buff where if we go to his ability and we open Avenge Krillin, he gets 35% blast damage when Krillin dies. So those are our major ones: tags, colors, episodes, and character names. The last thing you need to look at is how your team uses arts cards. So if we scroll, if we go back to status and we scroll all the way down, we see that this Goku brings 2 strike arts cards to battle. By default, your team brings 3 strike arts cards, 3 blast arts cards, 1 special skill arts card, that's the green one, and then 1 special move arts card, which is the blue one. So that's 8 cards right there. The 3 units you bring into battle are going to bring 2 apiece, so that's 6 more cards. So you are going to bring 14 cards into battle. It's going to be random what cards you draw based on the probabilities of each one, just like if you had 14 cards out on a table and you picked one at random. So if you had a team that was very strike heavy and all 3 of your units brought strike arts cards, that's 6 more plus the 3 that you started with. That's 9 strike arts cards, and then you would have 3 blast arts cards, 1 special skill, and 1 special move. So you would have 9 out of 14 cards would be strike arts cards. So that's the chance that your next card is going to be a strike arts card. 9 and 14. Pretty good. That's something to keep in mind when building your team out. So now that we have all these pieces, let's go look at some teams and see how all of this works together. Okay, so if we back out of here and go back, the All Saiyan team is your fairly standard, very aggressive, reasonably balanced team. So Vegeta and Goku both do extremely good blast damage. Super Saiyan Goku does okay strike damage. Spirit Bomb Goku does okay strike damage. So this team is very balanced on the damage side, but doesn't have a lot of defense. So we bring this blue Raditz and Shallot to increase the defense of all these units, and then we bring the Extreme Vegeta to increase the Ki Blast of all these units. So this team is going to be not tanky, but does a ton of damage, and it counters most colors. So almost any unit you bring, I've got a unit on here that can do decent damage to them without being at type disadvantage, and in a good amount of cases, I will have type advantage. Cool, so that's the standard Saiyan team. Another option that a lot of people run is they get rid of the Spirit Bomb Goku and they throw Broly in there. I know a lot of people don't have Broly, so you can't do that. I don't have Broly, I can't do that. Now let's look at a team that is similar to this, but not quite as aggressive and a little more balanced. So if we go over here, this is my actual PvP squad right here. So I can bring those top 3 units as my core team if I need to do a lot of damage, but if I see a Broly, I will probably replace the Spirit Bomb Goku with Piccolo, so that way I can actually soak up the damage from the Broly. And depending on the characters in that opponent's team, maybe I won't bring Super Saiyan Goku and I'll bring the Spirit Bomb Goku. But it really depends. So if they have a yellow unit who can counter my Vegeta, I'll bring Super Saiyan Goku because he can counter the yellow unit, and that's why this team is very balanced and very versatile. And then we have both of the bench units, Shallot and Raditz, to buff up the health of my not very tanky damage dealers up top. Okay, so this is a more balanced team. This is a very slight variation that makes it a more aggressive team. Now we see this defense balanced team. So this team is extremely tanky. It's not the most tanky team I'm going to show you here in a second, but it also does more damage than the team I'm going to show you here in a second. So what we have here is Gohan does a ton of strike damage, Spirit Bomb Goku does an okay amount of strike damage, and then Piccolo doesn't really do any damage, but he's super tanky. And then the other 2 options, Gohan and Spirit Bomb Goku, are reasonably tanky. So this team has a lot of defense. And then Raditz is there to buff up Spirit Bomb Goku's health a little more. Trunks is there for his Z ability to buff the damage on Gohan, and then the Extreme Goku buffs the damage of Spirit Bomb Goku a little bit, so that makes this team even more balanced. Now let's talk about mono teams a little bit. So monocolor teams, here is a reasonable example of a monocolor team. So what I would say is, if you have Super Saiyan Vegeta, you would switch out this Krillin for Super Saiyan Vegeta, and your top 3 would be the units that you bring into battle. So Trunks is a pretty good tank. He's not Piccolo level, but he's pretty reasonable. He does a decent amount of damage, and all of these units buff red units. So the Jocko increases critical chance for all red units. The second form Frieza and the Dodoria increase strike damage for red units. So this team as a whole can do a fair amount of damage. The only real issue this team has is if they run up against a blue team or someone who's running a Broly, he's probably going to just walk through this team. So right now I would say mono teams are not strong enough to overcome the type disadvantage like I said before. Okay, so the next team we're going to look at is the Ginyu Force team. So this team has the best synergy in the game. They're all built to fight together. They have great equipment. The problem is that all of their stats are garbage. Their raw stats are not good. So unless you're fighting with all of them together, they're not going to be doing very much damage in comparison to actual sparking units. But they are very balanced. You have most color types here. In most cases, if you run up against an enemy, you can choose a specific color, so that way you can deal with type advantage or type disadvantage. Multiple of them get reduced strike arts costs and blast arts costs as long as they're fighting with other Ginyu Force members, so that's cool. This team is not a top tier team, but it is a team that has good synergy, and this type of synergy is the kind of thing you're looking for in the long run. Okay, so the next team we're looking at is my Mad Gohan team. This is a team that I think takes team building to the next level. It's not just throw 3 units in a core and then find some units that buff their Z ability. So the idea of this team is it's all about Gohan. So Gohan does a ton of strike damage, and he's got some very special abilities where if you look over here, he does 20% bonus damage when all of the team members are alive, and then he does more bonus damage if a Piccolo dies. So let's go back here and take a look at the team. The top 3 characters are my core. And what this does for me is Gohan is going to do all the damage. I have 2 Piccolos alive at the beginning of the fight, so he's going to get a 20% damage buff, Gohan is. If either Piccolo dies, Gohan now gets a 35% damage buff. And these 3 units are 3 of the tankiest units in the game. Add to that, I'm going to have 2 25% health recoveries, which means I have 150% my normal health, plus this Extreme Piccolo right here increases the health regenerated when a yellow unit gets health back. So this is probably the highest effective health pool in the game, period. And it does a ton of damage with Gohan. The only thing you have to worry about with this team is running into a red unit, and if you run into a red unit, there's a good chance that you can take them down with the Sparking Green Piccolo and the Extreme Yellow Piccolo together. You get rid of that red unit, and then Gohan should be able to take care of the other 2 units. The 3 bench units down at the bottom, the Pikkon and the Cybermen, increase health of yellow units, so your Piccolo and your Gohan are going to be buffed even more. They're going to be harder to kill. And then the Tien increases strike defense, which is going to make your Piccolo and your Gohan even harder to kill. Another reason I wanted to mention this team is the strike arts cards and arts cards in general that they bring into battle. So we're going to be using Gohan to be doing 99% of the damage on this team, and all of his damage comes from strike arts. His Ki Blast is terrible. So we need to make sure that his team is bringing strike arts cards for him. If we look at Gohan, one drawback to Gohan is that he brings 2 blast cards, and he needs strike arts cards to do damage. So we have to counter that by bringing characters who bring strike arts cards. Luckily, this Piccolo brings 2 strike arts cards to balance that back out and increase the chance that Gohan is going to get the cards that he needs to do damage for your team. And then this Piccolo right here, while he doesn't bring 2 strike arts cards, he does bring 1. So there's going to be a reasonable balance of Ki Blast cards that don't help you a ton and strike arts cards that are going to allow your Gohan to tear the opponents down quickly. And those are all the major factors that go into team building. There are little nuances here and there that you'll pick up as you go, but with all of those things covered, you should be able to build a very solid team that can hold up well in PvP or in story, so you should be good either way. If you guys have any extra questions or you want me to help you figure out how characters work together, throw them down in the comments. I'll make sure to respond. And if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.